Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to those who have signed in early today. We're going to wait another minute or two before we get started. Let a few more of our participants join us today, and then we'll get going probably in a minute or so. Good afternoon. Thank you to those who are signing in now. We're going to wait another moment or two, let some of our additional participants join us, and then we'll get started once we see that participant number kind of tapering off and reaching a steady point. I'm seeing a lot of people joining right now, so we'll give them a little bit to get signed in, get settled, and then we'll get started. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Looks like most of our participants have joined us, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So, hello, everyone, and welcome back to our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Technical Workshop Series. My name is Taylor Laurent, and I'm serving as the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plans Project Manager. This 2050 MTP Technical Workshop Series serves as our forum for focused and detailed discussions on technical components of the 2050 plan, and we have a wide group of workshop participants. We have representatives from Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties, our 20 cities and towns, links, the Florida Department of Transportation, and many others. So we have a fairly short agenda today compared to our prior sessions, and we will begin with a brief overview of the ongoing work efforts to the development of the MTP, review our journey to 2050 and take a tour of the 2050 plan itself, and then highlight the public review period for this document and the recent public meeting. These topics will be followed by our open discussion, public comments, and a review of our next steps for the 2050 MTP itself. And we do have, and I still see more participants joining, many people joining the call today. So if you have any questions during today's technical workshop, please type them directly into the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be pausing periodically throughout the presentation to answer those questions. And if you would prefer to ask your question aloud, please use the raise your hand button, which is also located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, to let our team know. We will be answering these questions as time permits, again, either during our brief pauses between agenda sections or during our discussion period. I thank you in advance for your understanding. So to kind of start with our general status updates, we are continuing our coordination with the Florida Department of Transportation Central Florida Regional Planning Model Team. We will have some updates coming up in the next month or so, I'm hoping. So we'll have more to talk about at our upcoming advisory committee meetings for our technical and TISMO advisory committees. And then we've reached a big milestone for the 2050 MTP. The draft 2050 MTP has been published online at our website, and that does include all of the chapters, appendices, and supplemental documents that have been developed to support the completion of this plan. All of these documents will remain online in their draft form throughout the entirety of our public review period, which is ongoing right now. And we'll come back to that topic a little bit later in the presentation. And then we also have published our 2050 MTP's online draft needs viewer. And that's again available on our website. This is an interactive online GIS-based map of all of the MTP needs assessment results. So you can sort, filter, and look at projects in your area. So with that, and not stealing the thunder from the rest of the presentation, with all of these documents published and available for everyone to review, today we're really going to be focusing on our journey to 2050 and taking a tour of the different components of the overall plan. And we're going to start by reflecting on the overall planning process. We began this journey in early 2024 with collecting our background data and existing conditions, and then collaboratively developed our goals and objectives and shared vision for 2050, and identifying those drivers of change or future trends that may influence the path that we take to achieve those transportation goals. We then performed technical analyses, needs assessments, and evaluated multiple different funding scenarios. The results of all of these steps allowed us to develop the cost feasible plan. And now we're approaching the last step in this whole process, which is the plan's adoption in December of 2025, just 2 months from now. And then finally, its implementation. Now, throughout the entirety of this process, we have had both public and agency participation to guide the development of the 2050 MTP, and that feedback has been instrumental in developing it into the plan that it is today. And we'll be reflecting a little bit more on that, how your feedback has been incorporated from both publicly and agency perspectives a little bit later on in the presentation. So the four key requirements for the development of the 2050 MTP have been met. This is a 20-year planning horizon document, a minimum. It is being updated every 5 years. It is fiscally constrained and considered cost feasible, and does include performance-based planning or data-informed decision-making processes. We've also spoken at length throughout the 2050 plan's development about the planning emphasis areas, knowing that the MTP is both multimodal and multifaceted by design. All of these topics reflected on the screen are reflected in the documentation and published in the 2050 MTP drafts on our website right now. And throughout the entirety of the process, the public participation requirements were also met, including providing those reasonable opportunities to be involved, which was done both through in-person and online engagement, making all of the information available electronically, seeking input from traditionally underserved communities, as well as using visualization techniques and plain language to facilitate meaningful conversations. So, knowing that we've met all of the requirements, let's take that grand tour of the 2050 MTP itself. So, it is comprised of 20 chapters and more than 20 appendices and technical reports for supporting documentation. Today, we're going to highlight the contents of each of those individual chapters, and that will start with Chapter 1, our introduction. This chapter emphasizes the importance of a comprehensive transportation strategy that addresses current and future needs for Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties, while also engaging the community in the planning process. And this also outlines the 2050 MTP for Central Florida. So it's kind of your first stop. If you have any questions about where to go in terms of the 2050 chapters, this is the place to give you that orientation. Then we have Chapter 2, Goals and Objectives. This presents the transportation vision, goals, and objectives for the 2050 MTP, with the goals and objectives outlined in this chapter which have guided subsequent planning and analysis efforts over the course of the 2050 plan's development, including what will become the implementation and future monitoring of the plan post-adoption. Chapter 3 is for our existing conditions, area profile, and travel patterns analyses. This provides an overview of the region's demographic, land use, mobility, and emerging technology conditions. The region's existing transportation system is summarized by establishing an inventory of the infrastructure assets that we currently have, along with performance indicators of how the system is currently operating. Then we've also looked at travel patterns of both residents and visitors and summarized those in this chapter as well. Chapter 4 is for our congestion management process, which provides information to decision makers about current and future, both recurring and non-recurring, congestion within the Metroplan Orlando region. The congestion management process identifies existing congestion-related impacts and improvement strategies for both people and the movement of goods. Then we have Chapter 5, our Community Health and Housing section, which is a compilation of technical studies on the impact transportation has on public health and housing. This chapter explores best practices, desired outcomes, and next steps. Then next, Chapter 6, our Environmental Stewardship and Resilience chapter. This describes the environmental and resilience considerations and strategies that inform the 2050 MTP as a whole. This includes evaluations of the region's existing natural and built environmental conditions, outlines the process used to coordinate with agencies and stakeholders, explains the screening methods applied to identify potential environmental impacts, and identifies the vulnerabilities of the built environment. Moving into Chapter 7, this really focused on freight and goods movement and identifies the critical role of freight planning in shaping the Central Florida region's transportation future. It highlights critical freight infrastructure, key needs, challenges, and strategies to ensure freight efficiency, connectivity, and long-term economic competitiveness. Then Chapter 8 focused on our transit needs and really outlining the future of transit in our Central Florida region. This chapter includes both challenges and opportunities for regional transit, needs for both bus and rail modes, and transit investment opportunities. This vision of Central Florida's transit was made in collaboration with the Central Florida Regional Transportation Authority, or LINCS, the Florida Department of Transportation, and the Central Florida Commuter Rail Commission, as well as other relevant partners. Then Chapter 9 is where we incorporated our regional safety element. This really details the approach to transportation safety in the region and is based on the adopted Regional Vision Zero Safety Action Plan. This chapter includes an overview of transportation safety trends and how MetroPlan Orlando identified projects, strategies, and actions to reduce fatal and severe injury crashes on roads throughout the region. Chapter 10 was our active transportation needs, which is outlining the future of bicycle and pedestrian transportation in the Central Florida region. This includes a comprehensive needs assessment, evaluation of level of traffic stress and pedestrian level of comfort, travel accessibility via both bicycling and walking, and the identification of project needs to improve, enhance, or expand the active transportation network in Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. In Chapter 11, this is where we focused on transportation systems management and operations, or TISMO, needs. This really focuses in on those recommendations and improvements within the region. The purpose of this assessment was to provide a coordinated vision with defined goals and objectives that reflect existing planning efforts and lay the foundation for future TISMO planning and project selection. Chapter 12 it was for our roadway needs, documenting the process through which future traffic congestion was forecasted and roadway needs were identified and validated, both in partnership with FDOT and our local government agencies. And Chapter 13 is where we brought all of those individual multimodal needs together under our multimodal needs assessment. This includes identifying how project needs were identified, reviewed, and ultimately incorporated into the overall transportation needs list for the region. This chapter also describes the collaborative effort with our partner agencies to identify and review projects for their feasibility, elaborate on project descriptions, and identify consolidation opportunities to again really focus on that project feasibility and future implementation. Chapter 14 was our drivers of change, which explored 10 key drivers of change or future trends that describes a variety of assumptions and projections for the region's transportation future that were used to inform policy and investment decision making between now and 2050. In terms of Chapter 15, this is where we focused on our public participation findings. This one will be published on our website soon, but it will be focusing on the variety of different participation methods that we had included as part of the 2050 MTP, summarize what we've heard from both the public and the meetings that we've had, but also from the written comments received, and talk about how the feedback that we received was used to guide the long-range planning process for the 2050 plan. And it will also serve as the record of our public comments for the 2050 plan as well. Chapter 16 is our prioritization process, which describes the process used to evaluate transportation projects within the 2050 MTP. And this prioritization process uses multiple criteria, a multi-criteria analysis, to identify and select projects which best address regional goals and objectives. Chapter 17 was for our financial resources, really outlining those revenues available to fund the region's future transportation improvements and for use in developing the cost feasible plan. This chapter includes existing federal, state, and local revenue sources and their associated projected revenues through 2050 and explores those potential new revenue sources and funding strategies and provides a profile of discretionary funding and grant opportunities as well. And we have Chapter 18, which is our funding and investment policy, and describes the funding policy development process that we've incorporated throughout this calendar year here in 2025, really focusing on MPO federal funds and investment scenario planning to enhance the regional transportation system through various modalities. So it provides an overview of the public engagement process, technical workshops, and the evaluation of our various investment scenarios or funding approaches, all aimed at improving multimodal transportation in the region. Then for Chapter 19, this is our cost feasible and unfunded needs plan. Information for both the cost feasible and unfunded needs is included in this document. And as required by federal and state law, detailed multimodal project listings, cost estimates, and phasings are included in the cost feasible plan. This document also includes a summary of potential planning and investment strategies identified through the public participation and needs assessment processes. And then Chapter 20 is our conclusion. This outlines the next steps for the MTP following its adoption. This chapter really emphasizes the processes through which projects will be implemented and incorporated into MetroPlan Orlando's core products, including the prioritized project list and the Transportation Improvement Program, and also how the MTP will be maintained for planning consistency moving forward. So additional information about how the 2050 MTP was developed and detailed reference materials are included in the technical appendices as listed on this slide. All of these documents are published on the MetroPlan Orlando website, with those public participation documents coming soon. And thank you, Alex, for publishing a link in the chat for everyone to be able to go directly to the 2050 MTP website and take a look at those documents as well. So having gone through a quick overview of our 20 chapters of the MTP and what those supplemental documents are, does anyone have any questions about the contents of the MTP at this point in time? So as a reminder, please use the raise your hand feature located at the bottom of your Zoom screen to be recognized, or type your questions into the Q&A box. All right, not seeing any hands raised or new items in the chat. We'll keep moving forward. But if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box and we'll circle back to them during our next pause point. So with this, Chapter 19, that cost feasible plan, is the longest chapter of the entire MTP due to the cost feasible project tables themselves. Now, these tables document which transportation projects are considered cost feasible over the next 25 years, the priority order of those projects, and the unfunded transportation needs within our region. Now we're going to walk through these tables today, but these tables are the same ones that were distributed for your review as part of this technical workshop process back in August, with only minor formatting changes incorporated as they were published in the MTP format. So the cost feasible tables are organized following a simple four-step programming structure, starting with our existing and committed transportation improvements, which are projects that are fully funded through construction in the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. Then there are the projects that are in progress. These are the projects that are partially programmed in the TIP, but not yet finished or funded through construction. After those, we have the cost feasible projects, and these are new transportation improvements that have not been started, but are considered high priorities and financially feasible in the 2050 plan. And lastly, there are the unfunded needs. These are transportation projects that are needed within our region, but are not affordable based on the reasonably available revenues that we expect to have through 2050. I'm walking through some of the key tables, again, that we've discussed at prior workshops. We'll start with the state highway system, which is the cost feasible list that includes 51 projects that are considered cost feasible over the life of the plan, and which total about just over $1 billion of investment over the next 20 years. Now, this includes capacity, multimodal, safety, and operational improvements on a multitude of roads throughout the region, and this list is shown in detail in Table 19-5 of the draft 2050 MTP. Then we have our high injury network safety countermeasures cost feasible list, which includes two programs focused on implementing safety improvements, totaling an estimated $146 million of funding over the life of the plan. These two programs will support safety improvement projects on identified high injury networks, both on and off the state highway system. Once these projects are selected, projects will be implemented by local governments through the FDOT Local Agency Program or FDOT LAP program. Now, this list of programs for our high injury network safety countermeasures list is shown in Table 19-8 of the draft 2050 MTP. Then we have our urban corridor improvements cost feasible list. This includes 21 projects that will be considered cost feasible, totaling an estimated $123 million of project improvements over the life of the plan. Now, these projects primarily focus on multimodal improvements on a myriad of roadways throughout Central Florida. And once funded, again, these projects will be implemented by local governments through the FDOT LAP program. And this specific list of projects is shown in Table 19-9 of the MTP. We have our Transportation Systems Management and Operations Cost Feasible List, our TSMO list, which includes 21 cost feasible projects totaling an estimated $120 million of funding. And these projects focus on intersection improvements and technology enhancements within our area. And again, once funded, these projects will be implemented by local governments through the FDOT LAP program. And this project list is shown in Table 19-11 of the draft 2050 MTP. Then we have our active transportation cost feasible list, which includes one program and 8 cost feasible projects, totaling $44.7 million of funding. And this includes the School Mobility and Hazardous Walking Conditions Program and 8 trail projects throughout the region. Again, these projects will be implemented by local governments through the FDOT LAP program once funded. And this particular list is shown in Table 19-10 of the draft 2050 MTP. I do see we have one hand raised. We're going to make it through 3 more slides. So 2 more tables and 1 context slide, and then we'll come over to the hand that's raised. Thank you. So we have our transit cost feasible list next, which includes $13.3 billion of funding over the life of the plan, which does include $6.1 million per year from Metro Plan Orlando for eligible transit capital expenses. And then over the life of the plan, $9.5 billion for existing links and capital costs from other federal, state, and local funds. And then another $3.7 billion over the next 20 years for existing Sunrail service and capital costs, again coming from other federal, state, and local funding sources. And this particular list of programs is shown in Table 19-12 of the draft 2050 MTP. Then one of the last tables I wanted to highlight for you all today is the toll-funded and expressway improvements lists. Now, these represent $9.1 billion worth of investments by the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise and the Central Florida Expressway Authority over the life of the 2050 plan. These projects are included in the 2050 MTP for planning consistency, and additional information about these toll-funded projects are available on each organization's website, respectively. And there are a few other tables that are included in Chapter 19 and its appendix, which do include our interstate highway system and strategic intermodal system list, our aviation list, and then also the local Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties and each of their municipalities project lists as well. And all of these are included in the 2050 plan for planning consistency purposes. I know that was a brief overview of the cost feasible plan and the key elements of that. Does anyone have any questions about those topics? And I do see we have one hand raised. So Arturo, you're recognized.
Yeah, in fact, I think you answered my question in the slide about the toll roads. I was wondering, are you considering those cost feasible or not? But I
Mhm.
guess you are, right? You're putting them in the cost feasible list?
Correct. So if you take a look at, let me go back and check the exact table number there. Table 19-6, you'll see all the Florida Turnpike Enterprise projects that within their master planning efforts are considered cost feasible through 2050 based on the revenues that they anticipate having available for those particular projects. The Central Florida Expressway projects are included in another table. I don't have that immediate table number handy, but that was also developed in collaboration with the Central Florida Expressway Authority to show what those cost feasible projects are over the next 25 years.
Okay. Can I ask one other thing?
Of course.
The total needs, I guess the unfunded projects, do you have a total cost for them or an estimate of the total cost?
Um, I believe that it totals approximately $72 billion worth of needs that were identified as part of the 2050 plan. And I believe we have, and MTP team, please double check my math on this one. I believe we have in total 30 to $35 billion over the life of the plan to be able to address those projects. So there are more needs that were identified than were funds available to address those.
Yeah. So like 100 billion, I mean, you have 30 that you can afford and 70 that you cannot, roughly.
Uh, a little, uh, not necessarily a 30-70 split. There was $70 billion worth of needs total,
Hmm.
with approximately 30-ish, I need to double check the numbers, 30 billion that we can afford. So just shy of half.
Oh, you mean out of the 70, you can do 30.
Correct.
Okay, I was thinking that you had 30 that were cost feasible and 70 that were not cost feasible. Okay,
Mm-hmm. The true numbers for anyone who'd like to double check those are included in Chapter 19 of the 2050 MTP. So you'll be able to double check exactly what those values are.
great. Thank you.
I'm going off of memory at the moment. So thank you, Arturo.
That's good.
As I was pulling
Okay.
about that up, Taylor, you did a good job with your memory.
Oh, thank you so much for fact checking me, Christina. I appreciate it. All right. Are there any other questions or other hands raised that we want to talk about now that we've gone through a brief overview of the MTP and the cost feasible plan? All right, hearing none, we'll continue forward. But again, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A box or raise your
Sorry,
hand and we'll come back to those. Oh, I heard someone
sorry.
come off mute.
Sorry, Taylor. It's Christina. Couldn't find my mute button. Is it possible to get the spreadsheets of the tables? Um, like the way that we had them, there were filters and you can more easily kind of take a quick look. Are we able to get the spreadsheet version of them?
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
that one, we actually have a tip on a tip, my apologies, wrong project. Our MTP online needs viewer. That'll be the quickest and easiest way for you to do that sorting and filtering to see what needs were identified as part of the plan. Then we can talk about any of those particular cost feasible elements for any questions that may arise after that.
Is that something we're going to go over or? the needs viewer, you're saying kind of the
Mhm.
map version, or there's a way to filter and things like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Towards the end of this meeting, once we make it to the open comment section, I can do a little bit of adjusting to do a live tour of that online needs viewer, give everyone a quick view of what that looks like, because that is available up on our website now.
Okay.
All right, so a little more to come on that one a little bit later in the presentation. All right, and I see another hand is raised. Brian, you're recognized. Brian, if you're asking your question, you are on mute and we're unable to hear you.
Oh, how about now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Just piggybacking on Christina's question about can we filter out the cities in that app from the counties?
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
perfect. Thank you.
So I'm trying to navigate to that needs viewer right now while we are talking, because it sounds like that might be something we want now. So for anyone who goes to the MetroPlan Orlando website, click on the Maps and Tools item that you'll see at the top of your screen and go to 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Multimodal Viewer. You can also get to this from a banner that is on our 2050 MTP website. So the standard website that you already have a link to in the chat. And Alex, thank you so much for putting a direct link to this online needs dashboard in the chat as well. So everyone has immediate access to that. But for those who go to the website, we have a beautiful banner here for you to click on, and it will take you directly to, let's see if this will load while we're doing a live webinar, our needs viewer in totality. So this will bring up a quick blurb about what's happening. If you want some specific detailed information, we have published a user guide to be able to assist people with navigating this tool. But, okay, we may need to circle back to this one to allow for the, no, the screen to load. But on your own personal computers, for everyone who's logged in, at the top of the screen, you will see various drop-down options to be able to select and filter to view the projects within your specific areas. And the list and maps that you'll be able to see, I would suggest taking a look at the user guide as well, can be customized to be able to view what is on the state highway system and off the state highway system, what is included for the transit needs, and then the last third section will be for planning consistency. So for our MTP team, if you could also give me a little bit of a hand and publish a link to that user guide in our webinar chat, I think that would be really helpful for our attendees. But if anyone does have any questions about that online needs viewer, the user guide, or anything else in regards to that, feel free to reach out to myself or anyone on the MTP team, and we'll be able to assist you.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna need a tutorial. I'm trying to work the filters, and it's not quite working for me, but maybe later on.
All right, we'll follow up after the meeting. Thank you. I know for me, with all the webinar items streaming from my computer right now, it's taking up a lot of my bandwidth. So I don't think a live tutorial will work from my screen. Does anyone have any other questions right now? We will have a few other pause points before we get to the end of the presentation. All right, not hearing any, we'll continue. So this will be our kind of switch to that public and agency participation section that we alluded to a little bit earlier. So we had 4 primary means of engagement for the 2050 plan, all of which have been incredibly valuable in shaping the results of the 2050 MTP. We had our advisory committee and board meetings throughout the entirety of this process, about 78 so far, with a few more to come in the next coming months. We had this MTP technical workshop series where we have discussed key topics for the MTP in our depth and at length in this format, with 10 workshops completed to date, not including today's, which will be number 11. Then we had our interdisciplinary interviews. These were detailed discussions with really focused on our planning emphasis areas and experts in each of those fields to incorporate their unique insights into the development of the 2050 MTP. And this really focused on a couple of our topics where we had multiple of these interviews for freight, health, housing, and environment. And we also had multiple in-person public engagement events. I believe we're at 36 so far, with a few more planned over the coming months, plus our online engagement, survey results, public comments, and other items which are still being tabulated for that Chapter 15 document. But as of our public meeting, so this would be September 26th, we had over 13,000 people that have been reached and collaborated with throughout the MTP process. So we're very excited about all the feedback that we've received. And this does not include all of the local agency coordination meetings that we've been a part of and the 100 or so meetings that we did for the needs assessment process. And all of this feedback has been incorporated from each of these different avenues into shaping the 2050 plan in its whole. So the public feedback was really used to help inform the goals and objectives, preferred project improvement types, prioritization methodology that was used for projects, and the MTP funding policy as well. And then the technical feedback that we've received from you and all of our partners helped inform not only these first 4 areas, but along with our needs assessment and multimodal evaluations, the technical analyses of the planning emphasis areas and framing those topics into the transportation planning process, as well as the development of the funding policy and how that shaped the cost feasible plan. So we'll do another pause point. Does anyone have any questions about the public engagement or how your feedback has been used and incorporated to the 2050 MTP? All right, seeing no hands raised and nothing new in the chat, we'll keep going. So with the publication of all of the 2050 MTP documentation, the formal public review period for the 2050 plan has officially begun. To mark this milestone, we held the 2050 MTP public meeting on the first day of that public review period, which was actually last Monday on September 29th at the Orange County Multicultural Center for about 2 hours from 5 to 7 p.m. We had just shy of 20 participants come to get information about the 2050 plan. And this particular public meeting was slightly different than what we've done in the past in terms of format. MetroPlan Orlando made this public meeting an open house event at which attendees could browse 13 different information stations and discuss transportation issues with experts at each table. Now, each station also had a digital monitor showing those slides relevant to the content of each station, and everyone who was participating was given a map of the room so they could locate the stations that were most interesting to them. And then each map also had a comment form on the back, which participants turned in at the end of the event. The returned passport maps and the conversations held throughout the meeting really indicated that the most popular stations were the 2050 issues and drivers of change, so those future trends, our safety and vision zero concepts, transit, and transportation systems management and operations, our TISMO station. So at the end of the night, we had 5 in-person public comments that were given to us, and the topics that were discussed, not only in those comments, but around the room, really varied with transit, bright lines, safety, roundabouts, and traffic signals, and the need for more multimodal transportation really being some of the highlights and common themes of what we were hearing. We were also told that people enjoyed the public meeting format in which they could choose the topics that they wanted to learn about and talk to people who had developed those portions of the plan itself. So at the end of last week, our staff did post a video version of the public meeting content, which is available on YouTube and at metroplanorlando.gov/2050, which again, that link is included in the chat for those who'd like to see it. This video covers the high points of all the information stations and includes images and video clips from the attendees at the event. So while that public meeting was the kickoff for the public review period, we have several additional opportunities for people to submit comments on the plan. We have in-person and virtual public comment options at all of our upcoming advisory committee or board meetings. We can also receive emails, physical letters, phone calls. We're open to all types of feedback being submitted for this MTP. And again, that virtual overview of the 2050 plan is available on our MTP website, so people can get some context about what is included within the plan in the short form compared to this long form that we're doing today, and know how to navigate that document and go to the sections that they're most interested in. This public comment period will be open through November 21st, with additional comments accepted through the December board meeting on December 10th of 2025. I'll do one more pause for questions. And thank you, Alex, for posting a link directly to that MTP meeting video for ease of reference for all of our attendees today. Then I'm not seeing any hands raised or additional items in the chat, so I will keep moving forward. So this is kind of our wrap-up section. We're reaching the end of the 2050 MTP's development process, and this is actually our last technical workshop as part of the MTP's development. The last major milestone of this project will be the adoption of the plan this December, in just a little over a month and a half here. Now, our team's next steps following today will be including collecting and responding to comments received during the public review period, and preparing for the Metro Plan Orlando Board and Advisory Committees to take action on the 2050 MTP this December. After the plan's adoption, our focus will switch to implementing the 2050 plan itself. And as we have talked about in this technical workshop series, and for those on our advisory committees through that process as well, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is the foundation of how projects are federally funded within our region. The top priority projects from the MTP will be shortlisted onto the prioritized project list, and as funding becomes available and projects are ready to move forward, the projects are then programmed into the Transportation Improvement Program. Now, we have made it to the end of today's developed content, and I do apologize that dashboard is not loading on my screen with all the programs I have running it today. So if you do have any questions about that dashboard, please reach out to myself or email mtp@metroplanorlando.gov, and we'll be able to assist you with that in lieu of a live demo today. But are there any other questions or topics that we would like to discuss together here in the open discussion period? If you do have any items that we want to raise as a group, please use the raise your hand feature. Again, that's located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or type your questions directly into the Q&A box. And then just a few reminders, there are direct links to the 2050 MTP website included in the chat, where you can have access to anything and everything for the 2050 MTP. But there are also direct links to that online dashboard, which is included here in the chat, along with the direct link to that website, to the user guide, and the MTP meeting video. All right, I'm seeing one question that came in through the chat. So it's, should all the projects we submitted on the spreadsheets from the needs assessment process be included in the tables? So what you'll see in terms of the projects and their organization in Chapter 19 throughout the various tables, those are the projects that are eligible for MetroPlane Orlando funds. And you'll see that in the header of those tables, what the funding type is available for those particular projects. The projects that were submitted for planning consistency purposes, so the ones that are not eligible for MetroPlane Orlando funding, likely due to the fact that they are off of the federal aid network, those are included in Appendix Q, which is where all of those local projects are for planning consistency purposes. Now, within the online web viewer of all of the needs, that is where you can see all of the projects, regardless of their funding eligibility, located on either the first tab, that State Highway System and Op System needs list, needs compilation, the transit needs compilation, or the planning consistency needs compilation. So they are all present. And if you need help locating a specific project, feel free to reach out to myself or email mtp@metroplaneorlando.gov so we can help you. All right. Are there any other questions or comments or items that we'd like to discuss together today? I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not seeing any follow-up questions from the chat. So I'll wait just a little bit longer, give everyone time at their keyboard. Okay, well, if anyone does have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand so you can be recognized. But we will switch over to our public comment section of our agenda today. So we're going to open the virtual floor for public comments. So if there are any members of the public that wish to make a comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom or dial *9 on your keypad if you've dialed in by phone. After you are recognized, please state your name and address and give your comment within 2 minutes. You may also type your comments into the chat box or email them after this meeting to mtp@metroplaneorlando.gov. So Lisa and Rachel, do we have any hands raised or any comments that were submitted from the public that we need to recognize during this time?
No hands raised, Taylor, and no comments submitted.
Okay, thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate it. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out the public comment period and kind of go into one last reminder before we conclude this MTP technical workshop series. The draft 2050 MTP report and report chapters and the cost feasible plan are available online at metroplaneorlando.gov. And again, those cost feasible tables are the ones that you received back in August, so there should not be any surprises in terms of those tables. But if you do have any questions or want to talk a little bit more about that online needs viewer, please reach out to us by either emailing myself, emailing mtp@metroplaneorlando.gov, or calling our office at 407-481-5672, extension 306, and we'll do our best to help you. So unless there are any other last call comments, last call on hands raised, I want to say thank you to all of you for your participation in today's meeting and throughout the entirety of this MTP technical workshop series. I really do hope that you have a great day, and I'll be talking with you all soon in terms of the 2050 MTP and its adoption.